Welcome to Karate Cafe, your source for martial arts conversations since 2005. And now, here's your hosts, Paul Wilson and Dan Williams.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to, Paul, what episode is this of Karate Cafe?
Oh, I don't like to put a number on it, but let's
not put a
say
number on it.
it's...
We don't like to label things here at Karate Cafe other than the title of the podcast. That is Karate Cafe, by the way.
Because for us, it never ends, right?
Welcome all to the deep intellectual martial conversations that is the onion of Karate Cafe. And
it's sweet, and yet it will also make you cry.
That's right. To my left or right, I can never tell which, is my beautiful and wonderful friend, Paul Wilson. How are you, Paul Wilson?
I'm doing just fine, Dan. How are you today?
I am doing great.
I notice you're no longer on the moon.
I'm no longer on the moon. No, I like to, I'll just change my background a little bit.
That's okay.
And for all those on YouTube, you can see the background.
That's right. And if you're not tuning into YouTube, you should be, so that way you can see the background.
And
you
then
can see my wonderful dojo.
Below. Subscribe, like, and share.
Hey, guys, like and subscribe.
Yeah. I'm going to have a little sip of my Karate Cafe right now.
There you go. That's, I'm still waiting for some coffee company to wake up hip to that and do a Karate Cafe blend.
Dude, how have we not? We could I'm sure they make beans. We can buy some white labeled beans and put Karate Cafe on them.
I did, I reached out to somewhere. There was some like little coffee place, and I did that. I never heard back from them. It was the guys who sponsored Mark Maron's podcast for a while, and then because apparently people on podcasts can get people to sponsor them.
Dude, we could name the products after like different techniques or.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
We might have to dig into that.
Interns in the massive Karate Cafe studio.
Investors, send all of your inquiries to karatecafe@gmail.com.
That's right. And
millions.
And so I haven't got any more donations since the one the other week ago. That was so exciting. It's still
that was fun, wasn't it?
That was totally cool. So but again, snacks in the green room got eaten up by Dan. So there that is. We've been getting a couple more interviews.
He also drank all the chai tea, unfortunately.
All the chai tea, and because we don't
see, that's a joke for those that have seen the interview.
That's right. That's right. It's meta. The people have to go back and go like, what episode is he talking about? That's what we really need to work better. I guess we need to
drink all the chai tea. I don't understand.
We need more Easter eggs, and I guess probably need some after credits scenes or something.
Oh,
to,
right.
Some post.
Well, we would pull out the bloopers. I almost said bleepers.
And so, therefore, that is a blooper.
Right. I was going to be all cocky saying we'd pull out the bleepers. I did it again, the bloopers, but we don't have any. In the midst of me saying that, of course.
You got cocky. And,
I didn't even do that intentionally.
Although this actually dovetails really nicely with the
it does.
topic that we have
maybe I should practice that sentence a little bit more.
Yeah, and then I'll just not edit it back in, and I'll just do it in a loop, and we'll see what's going on. So we've been putting these videos out on YouTube, and some people have been watching them, and that's great. Actually, more than a few people, when I have sent them a link to the new show, they'll say, "Hey, I'll watch it," because I think maybe that's kind of going to a video is now the default, even in podcasts.
I'll tell you what, YouTube, the paid YouTube thing is probably one of the best moves I've ever made. To not have to watch ads. It is a fantastic podcatcher. It picks up. I can pick up and where I left off on any device. I don't have to download anything. It's just it's a great YouTube it's a great podcatcher. So just a recommendation for people out there. It's more than worth the $10 a month, in my opinion, to not have to watch ads.
Yeah.
And once you dive down the rabbit hole of YouTube, you'll realize that, do you want to know how to swap out an electrical switch in your house? It's on YouTube. Do you want to know how to change your oil? It's on YouTube. Do you want to upgrade the RAM in your laptop? It's on YouTube. So you'll really start to use it as an amazing resource once you crack it open. So
And
so
now, do you want to
yes,
learn more cool stuff about martial arts? We're on YouTube.
that's right. That's
So,
right. And so
and
this is not sponsored by YouTube, but just call me.
mhm,
Call me.
that'd be all right. Anyway, yeah, because I actually did look onto the monetization part of YouTube, because some various and sundry other martial art folk that I know have
Yeah,
YouTube channels or whatever, and I guess you have to have like a bazillion listeners or
you
tons
do.
of
Yeah, I think it's
subscribes.
like 1,000 subscribers at
Yeah,
minimum or something like that.
yeah. So get hot
So
clicking, people.
get clicking.
Or you can always just go to the website and hit donate and donate something to us, or shop via the Amazon link. Any one of those
Amazing.
would help this podcast, your favorite podcast, the oldest podcast on the whole internet. Matter of fact, I think we were actually around before the internet. We were just sitting around waiting. Pete was just waiting for the internet to be invented, and then Al Gore got hot, and now we're there. Many
That's
years
just
later.
that's just that's just dojo talk, dude.
That's
I
just
hate to
Dojo
tell you
Talk.
that. Yeah.
Oh snap! Anyway, but one of the topic today was actually brought up by someone who was watching the new YouTube videos.
Yeah.
Dan, why don't you let that out?
All right. So, God, I'm gonna slaughter this name. Heinz Kunz, you think? Is that it?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, that's phonetically.
HINZKUNZ.
Phonetically, I mean, it's because
Yeah.
it's a handle, so who knows?
Yeah. Left a great comment for us. Much
A
appreciated.
couple of them, yeah. Thank you.
And yeah, and one of the questions that he asked is, should you ever teach something that you don't understand? Now, I'm going to I'm going to rephrase the question a little bit because I think I know what he was intending to say, which is, should you teach something that you haven't mastered, right? Now, understand is a little bit of a gray area, right? Like, so I could say I understand a boxing jab, for example. I get the point of it. Should I be teaching that? I mean, if I haven't trained under someone that has trained under someone that has trained under someone that has potentially decades of experience, I probably shouldn't, quote unquote, teach that. I certainly shouldn't be charging to teach that. That's just my opinion. So I think of understand meaning to thoroughly understand and not just surface understand. So I don't think you should be teaching anything that you only have a cursory knowledge of. How's that?
Yeah, well, and that is a valid point. But for me, well, this kind of dives down deeper to like, define, understand, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, because depending how lofty you want to get, just like on our last episode with David Dorian Ross, when we were talking about, for those of you who aren't listening to it, it's right here. I'm going to try that. I'm going to try that. I
Oh,
haven't
you can
tried
do
one.
that? It's right there?
Yeah. Well, no, it's right here.
Right. Oh, it's right there.
Maybe right there. Maybe we'll put it in the middle.
No, right. Put it in the middle. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's
Okay.
probably right there or right there,
Right there.
depending
See,
on.
now again, got to watch the video to find out what we're doing.
That's right.
But one of the things I had mentioned about, feeling the chi and yada yada yada,
Mhm.
and he was like, I was just trying it out on you. He kind of admitted he didn't really understand,
Yeah.
now, as well as he does now on how to get the student there. So I mean, if you want to write that out large, you can go like, well, then nobody should be teaching.
Right.
Because because so and I think I made the comment in the thing is like, arguably that's all I do, right, is teach stuff I don't understand. But for me,
Yeah.
for the karate folk, like the pretty much agreed upon, and I don't know if it's the literal definition of sensei, is just someone who has come before. It's not teacher. It's not master. It's not,
That's a great point.
yeah, any of that. It's just I'm honest with my students. I say like, I've just been doing this longer.
Right.
You know, Often I'm doing it better just because I've done it longer.
Right.
But we both have, we, you know, like my senior students and all this is like, they have the same book I have, right? So,
Yeah, and
and
that's an interesting kind of take on it, where the only reason that you're listening to me at all is because I have more experience with this thing. So sensei doesn't give you a, an immediate authoritative title. It just says you've been doing it longer.
right. Yeah.
And that to me is I actually I didn't know that. And that to me is very telling. It really says, look, don't take my word blindly, right? You can trust what I say, but you should also maybe go out and verify it for yourself, you know?
Right.
And
Yeah.
so yeah.
I was listening to another actually a YouTube video of some group, and they were talking about Krav Maga, and they were interviewing a guy who was a Krav Maga instructor, and I guess they said from the gist that I got, it was whoever this was kind of stopped saying he taught Krav Maga
Okay.
because he was saying that he was looking at a bunch of videos of all these people who are teaching Krav Maga, and I guess he's been doing it for several years, and you know he's seeing these videos and he's going like, ugh, you know, it's
Interesting.
it's really bad. So they kind of stepped back a little bit from using that name, right? I mean, I don't know if they just call it Israeli martial arts or self-defense, or, but I mean, because he was pointing out, he's like, you know, uh, somebody can go to a seminar and get certified as an instructor and start teaching.
Yeah.
And his point was like, you know, but does this person actually you know, more or less, does this person understand what they're doing?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, you know, when BJJ blew up,
Yep.
and you know, seeing stuff like that, there were schools that went out and got, you know, certified
Same thing.
or got some rank in BJJ, and they're teaching it. Do they understand it? No.
Yeah.
You know, I visited the first BJJ school I ever visited was when I was in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I walked into the place and it was two like blue belts who were teaching it. It's a couple guys, and they had their, and I guess that's kind of sort of a level where you can start teaching,
Yeah.
you know, because it's all relative, right? You know, for
Right.
us, uh, some schools in our federation use the blue belt, and it's, you know, essentially the next level from beginner.
Yeah.
It's
I
so
mean, it's like in it's kind of very similar to Wing Chun in that essentially black belt is the system complete,
like,
right? So at an earlier belt than black, you start teaching because in a lot of martial arts, getting to black belt is not system complete by any means, right? You still have forms and techniques to learn
right,
after that. You haven't learned the entire system when you hit
mhm,
black belt. So it
right.
just kind of depends on the system, but
Yeah. So I mean, you know, that's why I mean, I didn't teach for a long time because, you know, I mean, it's first degree, second degree, third degree. I didn't feel like I knew enough to teach. I didn't feel
yeah,
confident, and I mean, I understood all the foundational parts of our federation of our system, but you know, I didn't, you know, and but I've learned a ton since I've been teaching, you know, and not necessarily just about teaching, but I just that I've started to understand more. You know, I
yeah.
don't
You're
understand it.
older and wiser.
And you know, well, older, you know, the the self-deprecation. Anyway, the you know, but so you know, teaching something that you don't understand. You know, I mean, I think like everything else in the world, you know, there's a lot of nuance there of understanding. You know, do you
Right.
understand the principle? I mean, there were, you know, 2D techniques, the joint locking and whatnot, that I told my students for years, like, like one day I made it work, you know,
Yeah.
and one day it worked, and they're like, oh, and I was like, you know, that's the first time that's ever
Yeah.
worked for me, and I've been doing it for I don't know, 20
Well,
years or whatever.
and I know I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of martial artists and you know, people that have been doing this for a long time, where there's one particular technique in a form somewhere, and they're at a seminar or something like that, and someone who has more experience comes along and says, oh well, this portion of the form is actually so that you can get the guy's head you know, hooked around your hand and blah blah blah. And people that have been doing this for years go, oh, I never realized that. So you can still have those aha moments
Oh yeah.
and still say you have an understanding. Right? I mean,
Right.
you're going to, hopefully you continue to have those aha moments throughout your whole life.
Yeah. Well, we had there's the the conversation that I've had with people many times. I said, like, there's a time, and I think we had an episode on it back in the day of, you need to stop being fed and start feeding yourself.
Yeah.
So when I remember, just for some reason this popped in my head the other day. There's a technique in Pai Sai Show, Pai Sai Die, where you're doing like this thing, right?
Okay. Yep.
And see, I gotta watch the video to see what I'm doing. And for a long time, when you'd say like, well, what is that? And like people go like, oh, you're controlling somebody's head. You're grabbing their arm and you're wrapping around their arm and you're controlling their head or whatever. I'm like, okay, or you're controlling their arm or controlling their arm, like kind of doing like an arm lock, arm bar kind of thing.
Okay.
And I was at this school and there's a guy, he was training in karate, but he was like a black belt in karate, but he was also like a black belt in judo and aikido. and he may have been doing jujitsu at that time too. Pretty big dude. And we were talking about that. And we said something about the application, and he goes, well, what do you think that is? And I said, I think it's that. And he goes, oh yeah, try that on me. And we were in the changing room, right?
Uh-huh.
And I was like, all right. So he threw a punch at me, and I did whatever. Ha! And I thought I had him, and the next thing you know, I'm on the ground, and he's freaking choking me out. And so part of me, it was like, I tapped out, and he's like, so clearly that's not it, is it? And later on when I'm teaching now, I'm teaching this to my students and stuff like that, and I'm kind of going like, and I would see that technique in other things. I'm like, oh, that's not really that. That's a parry in a trap or something, something like that.
Yeah.
Whatever the thing was, I was like, oh, so that was just kind of the placeholder. But as I understood it, that's what that was. Now you can go like, well, he also knew what I was going to do, so it was easier for him to, but he did point out an important, like, that clearly that application clearly wouldn't have worked on him,
Yeah.
So now I understand that. So I don't teach that anymore that way.
Right.
So maybe there's also like, part of teaching is understanding what you didn't understand, right?
That's a good point.
Of getting that experience. And, so some of that is trusting in your instructors, right?
Yeah.
And we've had many stories of people who got, burnt by their instructors, and ended up in Krav Maga. So buzzing. They were
Don't
told,
dig on those Krav Maga guys. They'll fucking show up at the house.
I know. Or won't they? Yeah, I know. Thanks for blowing our one of the things is, with that is, you've been told one thing and that might have worked, but it may also be something else. And so, understanding the breadth of what, doing this with your hands or doing that with your feet,
Yeah.
there's, I think there's a level of understanding, right? There's old man karate, there's old person karate.
And yeah, I think part of the problem comes, at least from what I've seen in my career, my martial career, is that there's an inherent authority that the instructor has, right? So when you come to the class as a paying member of the class and you see the person at the head and they are telling everyone what to do, then you assume that they are an authority figure on what they are teaching. And so I think with great power comes great responsibility, right? So if it's one thing to say, oh, I've been teaching this particular technique and I've been teaching it this way to my students for 10 years, and holy smokes, I realized that wasn't the right thing. Right now, as an instructor in that scenario, you just made an honest mistake, right? I mean, not even a mistake. It was just that you thought it was one way and it wasn't that way. And who knows, right? 10 years from now, you might flip it the other direction and go, oh, it actually was that way and that was wrong. And those are just going to happen every once in a while. There's going to be fringes of your knowledge that are a lot more fuzzy than the center gooey core of your knowledge. And I think too that a thinking person kind of knows that, right? Like your high school math teacher isn't going to know everything about geometric unity theory, right? It's just not, you can't know the depth of everything all the way down the chain. That
Yeah.
being said, I think where people get into danger is that they will go out to a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or a Krav Maga seminar, and then they will come back to their dojo where people perceive them as an authority figure and start teaching those things under the same quote unquote authority umbrella as the thing that they're actually an expert in. So I really, really have a problem with that. That I do not like. I don't like somebody that goes and gets a so I'm going to take this seminar. I don't care if it's for a week, if it's for a month, however long it is, it's not enough to come back and teach your students. Now, there's a different way to do this, right? What you can do is you can tell your students, "Hey, I went and did this thing. I had a stick fighting seminar over the weekend, and I would like to explore that more. And so, if some of you students want to stay after class, come for an extra class, whatever that might be, then what you're doing is you're reframing your authority and saying, if we do this extracurricular, like I call those martial art jam sessions, right? And I've done it before. And so really what you do is you say, we're going to have a jam session where it's just like we are now peers and we are exploring some aspect of the martial art. Now, I may have more authority because I just know more about martial arts. I've been moving my body in that way for decades, and so I might be able to lead the group in some way. But let's be very clear, I don't have the same knowledge about the stick fighting stuff, for example, than I do about whatever martial art I'm teaching you. So I think that is the clear distinction. And I have seen it where the instructor will go to the weekend stick fighting seminar, and then the next class, there's like, there's now 15 minutes of stick fighting in every class. And you go, what? Where did that come from? And you do feel like I am not being taught from an authority on this, and it's not cool in my opinion. So I think that the easiest way to do this is just be clear and honest with your students. That's all you have to do. And if you're honest and say, hey, I went to this seminar last weekend and I want to do some stick fighting stuff, because everybody gets bored with their martial art, right? Everybody gets bored with doing the same thing over and over again. And it's perfectly fine to explore different styles and different techniques and all kinds of stuff. But if you're going to do that with your students, you have to do it honestly. And you have to say, look, I am coming at this more as your peer than as your instructor. And I certainly shouldn't be charging you for it. So that's my piece. I
Yeah.
hope I didn't make anybody mad.
But
But
if you
if
did,
that's
please.
what you're doing right now, you really shouldn't be doing it.
All right.
And you probably know it.
All right.
So,
So, yeah, well, yeah, that's always been kind of the thread of our show, right? Is, being honest and being
yeah,
forthright. That's absolutely sort of a, like, hey, we did this. I went and did this. Let's play around with that and see where it fits into our system, kind of
yeah,
thing. Yeah, absolutely. Like,
yeah.
of being honest. Of I just did this,
Right,
so let's fiddle around with that a little bit.
right.
The I had people, come to my dojo, and what I usually try and do is it's like, well, show me your, lead class, run us through your basics, do, whatever. And then when it comes in and I see something good, I straight up tell them, like, I'm stealing that. And I'll tell in front of my, I says, I want to
Yeah.
steal that because that's good.
Yeah.
I like that exercise or that
Yeah.
stretch or whatever. You know, because it's, you know, it's a good technique. And then
Right.
I'm usually fairly honest that to let everyone know that, you know, I went to this school and they did this technique and they clearly had stolen that from the Okinawans. And so, you know, I'm just going to bring it back
Well, and I
into
think
in
too
our
that
federation.
that you bring up a good point, because here's the other thing is that, like you said, if it's a stretching technique, I don't know if you need to be a master in that particular stretching technique to teach it to your
Right.
students.
Yeah.
Right. So
But
I
I
don't,
guess where I was going with that was,
yeah,
yeah, it's true. Yeah. I mean, if you take something, you know, and it's a punch like this by some, you know, a vertical punch by say, you know, whatever, you know,
yeah,
it's, you know, like if I punch like that every now and again, and you know, see again, they're going to have to watch the video, and so, you know, I don't now claim that I'm a Wing Chun master.
right, right,
It's just, you know, every now and again I punch like that. Why? Well, because, you know, um, there's that. So, you know, I don't say I'm teaching kung fu. You know, it's, you know, when we throw some people, but I don't say I'm teaching judo, you know, or aikido. I may
right. So
take that a
there's a
much, but
difference.
right.
Yeah,
But knowing, you know, like being straightforward to go like, you know, this is kind of how it works. This is kind of
hmm
how I make it work.
hmm
Um, but I'm not that really great at throws, you know. And if someone really, really wants to know, then I'm gonna direct them to the
yeah,
nearest, you know, competent authority, judo place or whatever. Or I'll ask somebody to come in and teach throws and stuff like that. Because if there's a big push for that, then that's what I want to do, right?
yeah,
Because I'm gonna learn something, you know, and then
yeah,
whether I'll be able to pick it up and apply it and integrate it into you know, my curriculum and my toolbox, you know, in order to feel competent to teach. Yeah, I mean, because I already have that baseline of all this other stuff, so
right.
you know, understand to whatever level this other stuff, and
hmm
now here's this other bit that is, you know, same thing, you know, body placement, weight placement, you know, whatever the mechanics are of say a throw, you know, there's also the other mechanics that exist in the martial art that I already, I hope, understand some of enough to, you know, put those linchpins in and go, okay, this is how I see it working, and then I can teach it. But you know, is it going to be as refined as someone who really does that groundwork or really does throws or
Right.
really does punches? I mean, yeah, just like you say, you know, throwing a jab, yeah, I can teach someone how to throw a jab, you know, but will it be as good as a jab as someone who teaches boxing? You know, when it was me? No, of course not.
Well, and yeah, it's funny because I was thinking of a scenario in my head as you were talking. If for example, uh, there is a there's a karate instructor out there that likes to do a short tai chi form at the end of every class as a cool down, right? Just a weird example that I can think of. I think as long as that instructor is saying, look, I learned some Tai Chi and I learned a little bit of this form and I really like to use it as a cool down. I think it kind of helps cool your body down. It helps mentally center you and calm you after class. So this is why I teach this thing. If you think this is an quote unquote official Tai Chi form, or if you want to learn more Tai Chi, you need to go to a Tai Chi master, and you need to learn that from them. But as just a small cool down practice, it's perfectly fine. Like, again, it's just making sure that your students understand the context and you're not overselling who you are, right? If I've seen these instructors that are just like, I'm master of everything and no kata ninjutsu fumi and will destroy all comers, and I've got 12 black belts and 12 different styles. And I I have found that the kind of people that resume impresses are not really the kind of people that I want to do martial arts with. So I think that's the thing for me is there are a lot of people in the world that are very attracted to honesty and openness, and the fact that you could pose it in that way, to say, look, I am not a master of these things, but I want to explore these things, and I would like you to explore them with me.
Yeah.
Right? What does that teach your student? Right? So we always say over and over and over again, martial arts is not just this list of techniques, right? You're teaching your students to be open and want to provoke curiosity and consider other aspects of other things. And these ideas, these teaching moments will bleed into other parts of their lives, where they may be a software developer, for example, saying, well, I code in C++, and boy, maybe I should start taking a look at Python, but I'm so scared. I don't even know how I'd start to approach that. And then they go to class that night and their instructor says, hey, I saw some cool stick fighting videos online, and maybe after class we can get together and practice a little stick fighting stuff. And that person goes, oh, so you can just do it. You can just start doing stuff. And again, these lessons translate to other things, and they're bigger than just what happens in your class, and they're bigger than just you, and they're bigger than just your students. And so it's all that context that's important.
And then, so, I mean, again, for me, I think it just goes back to, like the definition of understanding, because, like, is rote memorization and regurgitation understanding,
that
or is, application and adaptability understanding,
right.
within the framework. Because, I'm well known, my sensei was the same way. He could never remember the order of any of the drills. He would just say, what's number next? What's number next?
What's number next?
And,
That's hilarious.
and he would kind of depend on the rest of us to understand it, or to recall it. And I'm
Right.
kind of much the same way. We've got a lot. I mean, now, as you move up, and you become an instructor and stuff like that, you still got to remember all that stuff, right? And that's why I tell all my students, is like, you don't get to forget the other stuff.
Right.
The whole thing about emptying your cup, you don't get to empty your cup. You just got to, like, stack another ring
That's
on the
right.
cup or
Make
whatever.
room.
You got to make room, right? So,
Stack another ring on the cup. What kind of cups are you drinking out of?
well, one of those, like,
Right. Oh, the telescoping cups.
Yeah,
Sure.
telescoping. Thank you very much.
Right.
But from, like now, so there'll be times where, like, I can't remember what it is. like what's number next? So I got to get the book out
Yep.
and look and go, like, well, read it. I'm like, okay, now I remember.
Right.
Or whatever, or
But what number it is isn't
attacker.
really important to understanding.
Yeah, because, from a defense standpoint, I don't care. I don't.
Right.
It's not ABC. Nothing in anyone's system should be ABC.
Right.
In my opinion. But, like, I'll read it and I'll, it'll be basically, attacker grabs your wrist and throws a haymaker. Okay. Well, there's that's the opening for a lot of the different techniques within
Right.
these sets, as a thing. And so it's like, okay, I gotta remember which one it is, kind of thing like that. But, read it and then go through it. Somebody grabs and swings and I do whatever the technique is. I'm like, okay, now I remember it. And so, from looking on the outside, and, some people in my federation will even look at this and go, like, well, you don't know the technique. I'm like, no, I know the technique, but I understand the technique. I just don't know what the number is. But if you grab me and take a swing at me, I'm going to do something, and it's probably going to be one of those techniques.
Yeah.
So it's because I think, for me, the understanding is, sort of the integrating within what you do. So, when we learn a new kata, like, the kata that I'm learning now, the next kata that, is for the next rank. I'm still mulling around with the one from this last rank. And, do I understand it? I don't know if I understand it. I've kind of taken it on board, and I'm finding parts that I'm grappling with, and
Yeah.
So, I'm not going to teach anybody that. But, at the last big camp, I was at, the people who got their 4th degree, then they said, okay, now go teach these guys, go show them their next kata,
Right.
And so I was teaching them the kata, but did I understand it? No.
Right.
But
Well,
I know the movements, so I can
and that's
regurgitate
the
those.
thing. That's the thing is like oftentimes in a lot of schools, you will be taught by a senior instructor or even a not so senior instructor at the beginning classes, right? And I never think that's a bad thing because the lower rank, let's see, the mid rank is getting practice at teaching. And the only thing they're teaching in general to the lower ranks is kind of gross motor movement type stuff, right? And I think that's perfectly okay. Do they understand every nuance of the form? Of course not. But do they understand enough that in that context, they know enough to start teaching the gross motor movements to the white belts? I would say yes, that's perfectly fine, you know. And the white belts then know that the mid-rank instructor that is teaching them this form is mid-rank and may not understand every nuance of the form like someone that's been doing it for decades. So it's that expectation again, right? It's that what's the perceived authority of the person that is the student, and what is the impression that the instructor is trying to give of what their authority is, right? So it goes back to you're not going to have in that scenario where the mid-level student is teaching the white belt, you're not going to have the mid-level student go to the white belt and say, well, honestly, I know every nuance about this form. Like I've been doing this for 5 decades and I get it already. You're going to have them saying, look, it's obvious I'm helping out the instructor and I'm doing that, put your foot over here and nope, not your right foot, your left foot. Okay, good. And this hand comes forward and not that hand comes forward. And, oh, that's a reverse punch. So you do it like this. Those things are fine. But if you're talking about, oh, this is why we transition from this technique to this technique, and this is how we do it, and the alignment of bones in your hand, and like all of those nuance things, generally the mid-level person isn't going to get into that anyway.
Yeah.
And if they get asked that question, I know I've been in the situation where I get asked that question and I say, oh geez, that's a damn good question, let's go ask the instructor.
Right.
And it's
And
not
then
hard.
and I think that's a very good um, process to foster, among your
Mm-hmm.
students is like, don't act like you know it all. Because,
Right.
clearly I
It's
don't know it
fine.
all, so, work on it. You figure it out and then tell me
Yeah.
what you think it is. And my senior students, a lot of times, I'll put them in a room with somebody and they're doing their thing and I'll be listening and I'll hear them saying the same things that I say, which is kind of cool, Or, it's like, oh,
That is kind of
okay.
cool.
Like I've hammered that message home and,
Yeah.
whatever. And he'll use some of these kind of some of the same examples, but then I'll tune in, especially in the online class, I'll drop in the breakout class and I'll just kind of listen. And be one of my senior students, she'll be teaching something and she came out like a week or so ago. She was doing, uh, using a training tool, a teaching tool, and I was like, "That's genius." Oh, that's like I don't know why I came up, but because she thinks different and she
Yeah.
processed a different way, and so she was helping the junior student out with, the way to move in a content. I'm like, oh, you know, and I was like, I mean, I didn't teach that to her. so, so
Right.
I mean, she's had other martial arts trainers, but I mean, I've never heard her say that before. So I don't know if she just came up with it on her own. But either way, I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I'm gonna, and then I'm gonna take
Yeah.
credit for it, but clearly, but I mean, but so that's like a level of like, okay, so she understands that part, and now she's applying that to doing this. I mean, that may
Yeah.
be something that she got from somewhere else, or like a different training method, but it's that sort of adaptation of, would you say, does she understand that kata because it was a lower level kata? Yeah, she probably does because it's a lower level kata. She probably understands it. Does she understand every permutation of it? No, but she understands how to teach it, you know?
Right.
And so, that's gotta be worth something.
And that's the thing, is that's got to be worth something. And I think that is, I'll give you a good real life example that I have based on a different topic. Is I taught beginner C++ at a community college. I have never professionally been, oh, it was C. I've written C++. So it was C. And I've never professionally written C, but I understand flow control. I understand looping. I understand functions. I understood enough to set that base for those 101 students to say, okay, these are kind of what these things are, and these are how they work. And I never like presented myself as some programming master. And that's what it comes down to. And I think one of the interesting things about the martial arts is that there's a lot of ego in martial arts. And I know it's shocking, but it's true. And I think what that carries with it sometimes is this genuine fear of looking like you're less than you are, looking like you don't know what you're doing. And so asking questions becomes a little bit scary. Having people ask questions becomes a little bit scary, right? I know
Oh yeah.
many of the very, very traditional is like, you never question the master. You
I've heard
never
your
question the instructor. You never even say,
Yeah.
"Hey,
Well,
I've gotten into it before with senior students going, I think with this form that the instructor just showed us that to turn our foot out instead of turning our foot in, and it was like a thing." Meanwhile, you just go over to the instructor and say, "Hey, which way does the foot go?" But the
yeah.
guy was so afraid to be wrong
Uh,
and look stupid that he didn't even want to do that.
Yeah. See that, yeah, that's a whole, I mean, I tell when people start training with me, especially people that have, martial arts experience, I tell, I say, ask me the question,
Yeah, for
because
sure.
I'm going to do it this way. You guys did it that way. Are you going to
Absolutely.
remember it some other way? You know, and if it's like, same, if it's karate, if it's Okinawan karate, what,
Right.
whatever, it's like, there'll be little variances, but I'm like, yeah, if I tell you to go this way, but you're used to going that way, again, you have to watch the video to see what I'm talking about. Um, I'm, you know, I'm taking the time to do these videos. I might as well just, get some views. Um, uh, Ask me why, because
Yeah.
there's a reason, and if I don't know, that's on me, because I should understand why.
Yeah.
If not why you do it this way, but why we do it that way.
Yeah.
So, and then if you do it that way, and that way's kind of cool, I'll probably take that way. And
Right.
then, I mean, I've subtly moved just like watching and talking to other martial artists, other karate guys, and they'll say something. I'm like, that makes much more sense with our system than the way we're doing it. I don't know, and I really don't know why we're doing it this way. I've
Mm-hmm.
just been kind of told to do it this way, and this way seems to be working. It works, and it's okay, and but this way makes more sense.
Yeah.
So I'll start dropping that in places and whatnot, because I think it makes more sense as I understand it. So maybe that's another level of understanding, is understanding, you know, what makes more sense, what,
Right.
something that is more in line with what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, understanding that difference, understanding that, like, oh, well, that's wrong,
Yeah.
or oh, that's, more correct than this way. I think is important. So, but I mean, again, with me, it always comes back to, like, being honest about, hey, we're, and again, it goes back to being a sensei. It's like, I just came here first. I'm just here before you guys.
Yeah. There you go.
There are guys who've been doing this longer than me that I listen to, and they're, yeah, I take it in and they tell me, and now I'm, at a level of, I weigh the information as it comes in and goes, does this kind of go with what I was taught, or what I experienced, or what I understand? There's three levels. There's teaching, there's, experience, and then there's understanding. And you've got to
Mm-hmm.
constantly be working in a cycle of that.
Yep. It's a
You know, lear-
cycle.
Learning something, understanding it, or teaching it, and then understanding it. Maybe it goes nicely, because, again, like I say, I've done techniques where I understand it works because I've had it done to me. So I've
Uh-huh.
experienced it, right? I
Right.
felt the pain, or I flew across the room, or
So
whatever.
you know at the end of the day,
that
The
works.
effect.
Yeah. So
Yes.
I just can't make it work yet.
Right.
So and for whatever reasons, maybe I don't understand a key component.
Now let
You
me
know.
ask you that. Let me ask you this. Would you teach that technique?
Well, yeah, I do
There you
constantly.
go. There you go.
And so there's the answer to the question. All right, bye everybody. The because again, I understand it works.
Right.
I just don't understand how to make it work. So,
Right.
like you can, like I said, and yeah, you probably shouldn't drive a car if you don't understand how a car works. Even though you've
Right.
been riding around in a car,
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean
Well,
you know how to.
what the one I the one I heard the other day was it's very very few people actually understand how a toilet works, and
True.
everybody should keep using those. Nobody should stop using a toilet
I
because they don't
strongly
understand it.
recommend that's good. That's a pretty good one. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's
Although I
true.
guess that's a little different than being a a, a college professor of
Plumbing,
the toilet class.
right? And I,
Toilets 101.
yeah,
You probably shouldn't teach toilets 101.
no, it goes in and you pull the handle and
And
it makes a noise and it
right,
disappears
there's
and
a
it goes
chain in
somewhere.
there.
Yeah,
Something happens.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and the understanding could be more complex. Like we have at our house, we're on a septic system,
Mhm.
which anyone who hasn't been in a septic system, basically, it's everything runs into a tank and it disappears somewhere.
Right.
You know,
So
and
yeah,
and there's but we had to have part of it repaired, earlier in the year, and so I got an in-depth knowledge on how they work.
right. It's
And
amazing how that works, isn't
and
it?
there's,
Like,
and there's a very simple way it can work, and there's a very complex way it can work, or relatively complex
mhm.
way it can work. But when you push the button and it goes away, and you don't know what happens. Like there's you understand what happens. It goes into a tank, and then it ends up in the
Disappears.
world somewhere. But
Right.
but now I understand how it works. It doesn't mean I couldn't use it. I wasn't like scared to
Right.
use flush the toilet or anything.
Right.
Um, I don't know where that falls on the spectrum
I
of the
think
question.
we may have gone off on a
There
tangent
we
there.
go. Say it isn't so.
I know.
But I guess yeah. So for me, in answering the question is,
Hmm.
I think it's perfectly fine to teach something you don't understand,
Yep.
as long as you understand maybe the components of what makes it
Yeah.
happen. Yeah.
And I think too, as long as your students understand your level of understanding, if you will.
If
So
you're honest about it and just learn, it's like, I don't know. I mean, there's lots of times where and someone will ask me something I don't know, and I'll make it a homework assignment. It's like, go
right.
look it up and find
Well,
out.
and I mean, to me, it's no different than if one of your students comes to you and says, "I need some investing advice,"
You need
and
to talk to anyone but me.
right, and the thing is that I think a lot of students do that kind of stuff because their instructor is an authority figure. It's someone that they look up to in the dojo, both in their martial arts practice, but potentially in life. They see them as a coach and an instructor. Um, Oftentimes, it's somebody that's older. So if you're a 20 something and going to the dojo and being taught by a 50 something, then yes, that person has um almost mystical quality to you, and you may think because they have a specialization in one thing that they know a bunch about a bunch of other stuff too.
Yeah.
And
And they're
that
trying
is
to make
just
a living out of teaching martial arts, so you probably shouldn't listen to any financial advice that they have.
there you go. So it's the same thing, right? I mean, just because you have experience in Tai Chi or Wing Chun doesn't mean that after a weekend Aikido seminar that you should come back and start teaching it in class. That to me is nutty. And I would say, even if you come back with some certificate, right? Even if the person that you went to said, "Oh, I give you this here's a piece of paper that says you can now teach that." Whoop-de-doo, right? I mean, if
Right.
if you morally or ethically don't feel like you should present yourself as an official instructor of this thing, then you shouldn't. Um, so yeah, that's my thing, is just be honest and open with your students. Let them know where you're at. oftentimes they'll go, I don't, whatever, I don't care. Right?
I want to
Because
punch something.
generally they don't.
Right.
But what you're not doing is you're not going to then set them up for disappointment later of, oh well, my instructor we started stick fighting, and we've been doing it for like 6 months because my instructor went to some seminar, and now a couple years later I actually have a friend that knows our niece, and we start stick fighting all the time, and I'm doing everything wrong. Like, my old instructor was an idiot. And you can
Flailing in the dark.
avoid that entire situation if you just go, I don't really know what I'm doing, but hey, let's play with this because it's kind of fun. And I think
Right.
maybe we can apply it somewhere to the things that we're teaching. And
Yeah.
then everybody's okay and you have fun and it's good.
Yeah. Like for me, it's always, bring it back to, this is what we do and this is how I see it. And,
Yes, yes,
here's
yes.
these concepts. And I'll say, I understand the concepts.
Right.
Yeah, how to apply them all the time. So, I
No,
think that's probably where that goes for me, is like, understanding where the level of understanding is. And well, I think understanding the
yeah.
concepts is a baseline with everything. We understand the concept of when you flush a toilet, it goes somewhere. Well, where does it go? It goes in the sewer system. There's all kinds of stuff going on over there. It goes into a
I
tank.
love that.
Yeah.
I love the idea of saying, look, we can study this external thing, but let's make sure when we're done looking at it, we then look at it through the lens of what our core studies are, right? And not necessarily just saying, oh, we're going to do this because it's fun and goofy and ooh, we're learning more martial arts. It's, we're doing this to gain insight into our core martial art. And I think that carries a validity to it then, of saying, hey, we're just messing around with stick fight. I don't mean to pick on stick fighting. It's just the first thing I thought of. We're messing around with the stick fighting
Dog Brother's
stuff.
gonna come after you.
Right. Oh God, I hope not. Because we can gain some insight into what we're doing on a daily basis. And that way too, you don't necessarily have to feel so pressured about getting the stick fighting techniques right, because really it's just a tool to gain insight into your core art.
Yeah, that's
So I like
maybe
that a lot.
yeah, maybe it's not you. It's like, should you not teach something you should understand, you don't understand? Maybe you should understand what it is you're teaching, like how understand
Right.
what this thing applies to your teaching.
Yes.
So
Yep.
that's a
Yep.
hackneyed way of getting that thing across. But that's a really
I
great
like it.
topic, and I appreciate it being sent in. I appreciate all the
Yeah.
feedback that we get from the listeners, and we strongly encourage you guys to comment. Post stuff on the Facebook
Comment
page.
below.
Comment below. Comment stuff on the send us email, karate@gmail.com. Send us a tweet, whatever the kids are doing these days. Let us know. It gives us good topics to talk about, things to noodle on, even if we don't understand it.
Come by our MySpace page.
Yes, and visit our Smash book. I don't know what.
Smash book?
I don't know. I don't know what it is. I just made that up.
Smash page?
Smash. I don't know. Is
Face
MySpace even?
space?
Is MySpace even
It
like?
is actually. It is,
There's
yeah.
still.
Musicians still, I think.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. That's what it was originally. So I think,
Maybe I should see if I can find my login
I
and
don't know.
do that, and then force everyone to go over there. Anyway, hey Dan, this was a really good conversation.
I think so too. Yes.
It was a good topic, and thanks for the comments. Keep them all coming. I think that'll put a pin in this one.
I think that'll put a pin in this one.
That's right, because I think I understand that it's time for me to get back to work. Dan, good talking to you.
You too, Paul.
And we'll be talking to you all again very soon.